What he has to say about this, really. I have no idea, but something has to be done about this. Like I said, something has to be done about this. You can't go on this way. Yeah, you're damn right I can. Yeah. And someone has to do something. It's not like you're doing anything about it. It'll work. I brought everything I need.
Unforgiving, a Northern Hymn is a first-person horror game that follows Lynn, who awakens tied up in a car.
God damn it, it's dark.
Atmosphere. The game opens with a car crash and dumps the player in the deep end as you've got no idea what's going on. With no backstory to lead up to the events, it's sort of bewildering and easy to feel like a third wheel for a lot of the early game, as Lynn and her brother have a lot of history that you're just not told about. But it doesn't take long to start experiencing some of the eerie, electrifying moments as the pair go for a long walk through the woods in hopes of finding a way back to the road. Soon the two are separated and the atmosphere really intensifies when Lynn is left to fend for herself. Walking through swampland or darkened, murky woods with nothing but seemingly recently abandoned huts and creepy ambient music to keep you company fills a lot of the early game with apprehension since you don't know what to expect. Its tension building is pretty great. It explains so little and blends the fantastical with the realistic so effortlessly that it's easy to get sucked in. The game continues to be mystifying as it keeps going, with a lot of seemingly unrelated things that layer on top of each other, from partially submerged houses, weird radio transmissions, to supernatural entities like giants and shadow people making their presence known. The magical is embraced so fully by the end that it feels like reality has just been pushed aside as you're swept up in the dark fairy tale. Pushing forwards feels like Lynn will never surface into reality again. The atmosphere is never very strong, but it layers on a lot of interesting things with finesse. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. The game slips in some jump scares here and there and there's a lot of electrifying scripted events that are mostly executed really well because there's a long gap between each one. It paces them very cleverly, mostly using banging noises or auditory cues to get you to freeze in place in case something's actually there. The scripted events are especially well done, with so many putting you into difficult situations and then subverting expectations or leading to jump scares, like the carriage section where it puts an enemy right in front of the carriage, and even if you outmaneuver it, it gets the last laugh. On the other hand, the game also tries to do chase sequences, and I somehow managed to beat the game without dying once, because it seemed to be very easy to lose the enemies and they didn't pursue me very far. Your luck may vary, but I found the enemies were just unable to find or catch me. They weren't very frightening either way, and their poor ability to sense or chase me didn't help. The game has a light mechanic similar to Amnesia Rebirth, but the game is far more generous with its light resources, and I felt general less fear of anything happening to me while I was in the dark. Another mechanic has you playing a harp to unlock doors and sections where you're actively hiding from enemies, makes playing the harp feel incredibly foolish, but you have no choice but to do it to progress. The game also likes to put you in difficult gameplay situations as well, with sneaking around a room full of enemies multiple times, like the room full of Bloodsuckers in Call of Pripyat, but Unforgiving maximizes the dread by making you do it for much, much longer. Unforgiving isn't a very long game, and its scares are pretty spaced out. Even with the enemies seemingly having no chance of catching me, there was more than enough frightening moments to keep the game going. That's 2 Harry Masons. Sound design. The music is a combination of synthy pulses and suspense pieces, with high-pitched whines and eerie, heavily reverberated drones that play constantly throughout the game. The game brings in thudding drums and percussion to emphasize the danger of the chase, and it works in hyping up those parts of the game. The harp playing is accompanied with glassy synth notes, and it really makes fusing the thing feel more magical. And the satyr also plays haunting melody on the violin, which is always strangely hypnotic but eerie to hear. The sound effects are pretty great, with lots of different things working together to bring the environments to life, with a lot of things being used to provide either sudden jump scares or unsettling moments, like the sound of a fly buzzing in your headphones. But where the game really excels is the voice acting, with Lucas and Lynn sounding realistically like a brother and sister. They interact really well. The antagonist of the game is a little too over the top for me, but his lines are incredibly sinister regardless.
This isn't happening. It's a dream. Just a bad dream. This isn't possible. Not possible.
Something that surprised me greatly was how creepy the Shadow Men and other monsters sounded, with their strained breathing noises being unpleasantly laboured, and also the gremlin-like creatures being creepily high-pitched and animal-like, and the pained screams of Lucas when he gets trapped under a rock are just painful to listen to. The directional audio is also incredibly good and allows you to get through a lot of the areas where the light is low, or where there's a lot of enemies. In my opinion, the sound design is just nearly flawless. That's 3 Harry Masons.
Holy hell, it's getting closer! Come on! Hurry, cross the bridge! Don't stop!
Gore. The game itself isn't very gory, with only a few moments worth mentioning, but the shock value of Lucas dying and then having to remove his eyes for a puzzle is extremely uncomfortable and will haunt the player long after the game ends. The sickening way it's done as well, with Lynn's whimpering and Lucas's pained whines, makes an already difficult scene even harder to endure. The gore is brief, but if you remember anything about this game in a year's time, it'll be this. That's 4 Harry Masons.
Hello, it's Lucas.
Story. The game opens with a car crash, with Lynn breaking free from being captive, kicking Lucas in the head and causing the incident. After surviving the crash, Lucas explains that Lynn has some kind of addiction, which is why she was bound. The story sort of fades out for quite a long time, with only strange diary entries on the lore of other characters who inhabited the area before mysteriously vanishing, filling the void in as Lynn is tasked to bring the harp to the mysterious satyr, which persists until the game ends and then brings it all back into a loop. The game is pretty short, and not much can be expected in around 2 hours, but it's unclear if anything you did had an impact, or if it's all a fever dream because of Lynn's supposed addiction or something similar. The story keeps building mystery that doesn't feel like it paid off. There's enough story to be intriguing to learn more, but there's never any answers for anything that I could find, which left me feeling underwhelmed. Making the final score 4 out of 5 Harry Masons. Unforgiving is only 2 hours long, and it uses that time really well. Just the story either needs fleshing out or a better explanation. Again, I'd like to remind you this whole thing is down to my opinion of horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. And always go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.